Obviously you have to glue this onto the neck, and you're eventually going to clamp it down, let it sit best overnight, and then we're going to sand this down, get it all nice and flushed with the neck eventually, and then after that we will install the fret wires. I'll show you how to do that as well. But I have a little tip on aligning the neck and the fretboard together. I made my marks right there, my middle points right there. Now when you're working with glue, it has a tendency again to slide, and you don't want that. When you clamp it, you know, it might has a tendency to slide, and when that happens, then all this hard work won't pan out. So I have a little tip that I do. What I do is I have these brad nails. They're pretty skinny. I'm not exactly sure how skinny they are, but they're brad nails. What I do is I hammer one side down over here, and then another side down over here, and then I got my and then I nip it off just slightly, just enough to where it'll stick out. And what I'll do is I'll line up my fretboard. Once I line that up, I give it a press just to get the marks. When it's completely lined up, then you press it down just to get the marks on the bottom. And what I do after that is once I get the marks, then I'll drill out. I'm gonna drill, I don't know, I think that's 1/32, small bit of it to the marks on the fretboard. So that way, when I slap it back down on a dry fit, it dry fits without actually having to, without it moving. So that's a little tip that I do. And then once I feel confident with that fitting, then I'll start applying the glue. I use tight bond. I can use just several types of wood glue for these kind of projects. They all work. And then I apply the glue, and then I fit it in the neck, and then I clamp it. And that's about it. Pretty easy, and I'm about to do that right now. So I nailed in a really thin piece of brad nails on one end, and then the other end. And what I'll do is I'll just I will nip that. Obviously, I don't want it just enough to where, you know, it'll catch on the fretboard. So, you know, right around there is good. I'll give that a nip. So you got that little piece right there, just enough to where when you put down the fretboard, it'll just kind of stay intact in place. And I'll do that, and then I'll do this on the other side as well too. There. Looks good right there. I'll just nip that. So you got those two end points, and then I'll get my center line right here. You can see. Find my center line and then press that down just to get a mark. Drill a hole on this. Once I drill a hole on it, it should stay flush into it without having to worry about sliding around. So I'll find my middle mark right now. So I found my marks, right, and just kind of pressed it down to dig into the brad nails. It's been the head's been trimmed off. And what I do is I get this piece of block and I just kind of lightly pound it just so it stays in place. On the other side as well too. Just a little pound. There, that should be good. And once that's pounded out, flip it over. You should be able to see the marks I don't know if you can see it. There's the one mark right there, and then the other mark is right here. I drilled a little hole on those the marks, one side and then the other side, and then we'll try to do a dry fit on it. That one holds in place pretty good, and then the other side holds in place pretty good. Oop. There you go. It's a little wobbly, but that's okay. At least it's not slipping and sliding erratically. By the time you clamp it, you can, you're not struggling with it. So there it is. One thing I try to do too as well. I dry fit the clamps first. I put something on top of the fretboard so it doesn't get damaged. I dry fit it, and also I dry fit the nut as well too, the spacing of the nut. That way it's and once I glue it down, I immediately take this off, and I just put a shim right here, another piece of wood, clamp that down to the headstock just to make sure it's nice and stable, it doesn't move around while you're clamping. So yeah, and then I'll just snap that out once the glue is applied and it's clamped down with the glue. So just do your initial dry fit first on this. Okay. Do this side. Do the neck first. Fair amount of glue. I tend to use one of these foam brushes for the neck, only because I kind of want it. I don't want it oozing out too much. And just make sure that it's applied nice and evenly. Yeah. There you go. Then I will do fretboard now. The thing about doing this trick with the brad nails is when you apply the glue, you kind of lose your middle marks and you can't see it anymore. So, so it helps out that you do these brad nails, because that way you're not relying on your marks, your pencil marks, So. Okay, drying up, I can feel it. So this way you just stick it in there, find the slot. And there you go. Just kind of found the slots now. Scrape off the excess, oozing out a little bit. We're going to be sanding this anyway, so it's all good. You get a lot of squeeze out. We're going to be sanding it anyways. I like to scrape it out a little bit so it doesn't get all over the clamps. And also the groove slots, Can get on the groove slots. Alright, looks good. Now, got my clamps already pre-measured. So I start over here on this side. Make sure that's tight. I don't have to tighten it super tight, I just want to secure it as soon as possible. Over here on the heel block, And then from here you do your final adjustments on the nut. I can take out the nut now because it's nice and adjusted. There we go. There. Just to check on my pencil mark that it's in the middle. Looks good. I clamp the middle. I do four clamps would be good. On a guitar you do around 5. Actually 3 on an ukulele is plenty, but you know, as the old saying says, you can never get enough clamps. There. Now I do my final tightening. Squeeze out on the glue now. I tend to tighten this super tight, especially over here by the beginning of the neck, where the neck starts. And it's super tight. I can take this piece out, this clamp out, to leave the tension a little bit on the headstock. So there it is. Clean off the squeeze out a little bit. This end. All right. Now we just, you know, with this glue, tight bond, 3 hours you're good. I tend to do overnight only because I just want to make sure that it's super glued on there. So we'll do the fret wires, which I have right here. We'll install that. I just got to do an arch on this, do a little bending. I tend to bend it a little bit when I hammer it in. It just makes it easier just to make sure that the rivets go into the groove. But yeah, this is how we do it. That's how we do it. Quite easy. Very easy. Alright. Hope this helps.